Hello and welcome to another demonstration. If you're in the premiere, I'll be in the chat so I can say hello or answer any questions. So this is my Valentine demonstration, and these are bleeding heart flowers. I think I saw them or read about them and I was really intrigued, mainly because if you turn them upside down, they look like a lady in the bath, and that's what's really inspired me to paint these. Okay, using gouache, because I like the matte and the flatness that it creates and how the colours intensify as they dry. All the brushes I'm using today are flats. So I've got bigger flat, little flat, and a teeny tiny, this is actually a flat. I don't know if you can see, but teeny tiny little flat. It's because I quite like the way you can create a big mark, but also use the edge to create smaller, finer lines. So this is all done with flats. And my normal colours, red, yellow, blue, I'm going to add a green. Now, mixing colours is really important and it's fun and you learn a lot from it. But sometimes having a pre-mixed green, one of those greens straight from a tube, makes things a little easier and keeps the consistency. So I'm looking for a nice flat background, and so I'm going to use a pre-done green, but I will add a bit of blue, a bit of yellow, so it's not quite as flat. There's no problem using a pre-mixed green. Greens do vary hugely from suppliers, so what you do is you find green you like. It's not always necessary from the name, and I'm sure I've done a back to basics demo talking about sap green and how all different suppliers make a different green, because green's made up of blue pigment and yellow pigment, and each manufacturer will use different blues and different yellows to make up what they call sap green. So it is a case of finding a green that you like from a brand you like, because they do vary a little. It's part of the fun, part of quirks of using art materials. So you can see there I'm using the edge to go into the shape. I don't know if you ever painted windows. Using a nice flat brush gives you a clean line at the edge. So let's just go around. It's gone a bit in a bit. Droop them down. You can see how easy it is to apply an even colour of green. Gouache is a lot of fun because it does give you strong colours, strong opaque colours. If you're not familiar with gouache, I'm using the Winsor & Newton Designer Gouache, which is an artist quality gouache. And gouache has been overlooked as a fine art material for quite a while, mainly because a lot of the colours weren't designed to be very light fast because they didn't need to. So designers would use them for pictures that would then go into print. Therefore, the original would be copied, and it didn't matter about light fastness because it wasn't being displayed. But it's now become a lot more popular. So light fastness is something manufacturers have looked at and are working on to create a good fine art standard opaque medium. Go. See, that's really easy to do. Just go around here. There's a bit in there I need to fill in. I forgot that bit as well. I could go down to the smaller flat, but I think at this stage it doesn't really matter, because Gouache, though it's often called an opaque watercolour, which it is, so once it's dried can be reactivated just like a watercolour, can be thinned with water. It also has qualities and characteristics of acrylics. So you can go over and cover areas. With watercolour, it's not always so easy to go over and cover some of the areas because it's a transparent medium on the whole. But with gouache, like an acrylic, you can put the white or light areas on top of dark areas. So it's kind of sits in between, but I think of it as a medium on its own because it has some really interesting characteristics. It works really nicely on a dark surface, beautiful on black, and again the colours ping as they dry. Some of the colours will dry a little darker and others will dry a little lighter. A little bit of colour shift there. And like I say, you can rework, you can lift, you can manipulate the colour. Okay, green. But like I said, I'm going to just add a bit of colour in the background, add a bit of that yellow. Purposely using that flat brush and a bit of the blue. Just so it doesn't look as flat. And this is where the flat brush comes into its own. Look at those beautiful marks. Picking up some of the blue. So these flowers are the pink variety. You get white, which is quite rare, red and pink. And I've looked at meanings, because flowers often have meanings, but in different cultures these have different meanings. In some cultures it's forbidden love for lost love, and then in others it's new love and romance. So take from that what you want. The flowers are actually part of the poppy family, and you can probably see that with these leaves. They have that similar texture to some poppies. Just filling in. Now this is not on the original as such, because I've cropped the original photo down because I wanted to concentrate. I don't have a lot of time and I want to concentrate on a couple of flowers. So I've kind of added the shape to this because I love this little star feature and I wanted to get it in, but on the crop version it actually comes down here. I'm just looking at where I can use this yellow one. I've got it on my brush. There's a little bit of green there. Probably some in there, but I won't do that at the moment. Okay. Don't need to do detail straight away. I can work over it like an acrylic, so I'm just going to really clean my brush and get on with the petals. So a lot more white. These paints have been sitting for a while, so there's a bit of yellow gum arabic has come out of the white, but that happens with lots of paints if they've sat around for a while. Now this red is quite strong, so I'm just picking up a little bit. And you'll see I have 2 areas of white because I want a pristine white. And I will contaminate this white probably a bit too much that I won't be able to pick up a pristine colour. Okay, let's start from the top. Following shape around like that. Again, using this big flat brush. This is on Bockingford. That's a Bockingford paper. It's one of the cards that have been cut with a deckled edge, which is really nice to work on. You're working on a quality surface that's been cut very professionally. And painting a handmade card, I think it just really takes this to a new level. And it's always nice receiving something handmade, because that means that person's taken the time to think about you. Right, so that's got a little contaminated with the green, not a problem. I just probably need to let that dry. Right, let's get a little stronger. And I'm working from the bottom, because this is where the stronger colour is. And I'm pushing it up into the lighter colour I've put on. And I might add a little bit of blue. Start with the purple down here. Right, so it's dark along here. I've sketched this out and I've put some lines on suggesting the direction that the colours go in the petal. It helps me think about brush marks. Look at that bright colour. Now, put some on here. Using that edge of this flat brush. A lot of this I probably do with just the bigger flat. And I know people do get scared using a bigger brush, but you picked up a good amount of colour, means you don't have to keep reloading, and you can get quite fine detail. So these colours are actually the primary colours, so primary blue, primary yellow, primary red. It's just a perfect colour for this, but also excellent mixing colours. So they'll create lovely oranges and purples. And this primary red actually makes a perfect colour on its own for these flowers. Okay. Is that dried yet? Yes, that's better. Kind of just pretty much blocking out, still picking up that green. It's a bit wet. Plotting out where my colour wants to be, because there's not going to be so much work down here because it's white and I have white paper, therefore half of that is done for me. Right, you can see here, let's go back with this white. because there's a bit of pink already on there, this is going to be slightly pinker. See how that flat brush really helps create that shape? Now this bit's this way, go. Bring it down into. It's much easier to start off a little bit more cautiously because you can always add colour. I like to be quite painterly with it, so therefore I'm going to be blending and adapting on the page rather than using that very flat finish that you can achieve. I'm going to do a little bit more painterly marks with it. So blend and create shapes on the, that's too strong, so go back that way. Now I've made my brush a little bit drier, and you can see how that's gone a little bit more spiky. That's going to give me some of that texture. Okay, let's try this side, so it's lighter at the base, picking up almost neat white, using the texture of the watercolour paper. See if I can cover that yet. Yeah, there you go. See how the white covers? Actually need to reshape slightly. So even into that darker background, I can just slightly reshape that. Oh, I can see one. This one I haven't done. I've got this bit here. There. I think that's actually quite a little darker. So what shape does this make? It folds over here and comes up there. Just make this side a bit darker while I've got that on my brush. That again folds up there, darker at the bottom. Same here. So using the texture of not only the paper but the brush. As it gets drier, it gets a little bit more spiky. And that's perfect for these lines. Blend that in. Soften that a little bit. Okay. Going to go down level, so I have a little bit more control. Make sure this is nicely shaped. and it actually goes a little lighter behind here. You can really just softly put the colour on. Any really light bits I'm going to probably leave to the end. I will probably keep slightly overworking some areas. The reason being is this colour is so strong, and you need to find a perfect middle ground. But this is the beauty of gouache. You can do this. Right. There's the stalks, so they are quite strong red. So let's put them on. Goes into a little triangle there. See how I can get such a fine line. Again, this is actually red. And this one, where does that go into? It goes down here, and then this petal comes in front of it. Bit of blue, light watercolour. I can reactivate with water. This has the dark edge. I want to blend that in a little bit. Clean brush, just make that a little less harsh, and actually strengthen it because everything's quite pink here. I want to make sure I define some of the shapes. So here, let's bring that back. Just a touch on that edge. Maybe along here. So it's actually a little lighter here. See, by adding that light underneath there, it actually brings this other petal forward. Adding the white is one of the really key features of gouache. Adding light colours over dark means you can just keep manipulating the colour. Okay, let's put that out a little bit more. It's a bit flat, so let's just add a little white. Okay. Clean, use some of this clean white here. Brush too wet. Right, so white and a tiny touch of that purple. Let's go in here. The brush wasn't clean enough. White. Let's try the purple this side. Bring out some of those shapes, and this has got a really lovely looks a bit messy. And the reason is because I want to blend it. So all I've done is put pigment on the surface. Then I can move that and shape that as I want. So I can see a little bit of pink in there. And then that's actually a light blue. It's really quite difficult to show white areas because you don't want them to be just totally flat. And I do know this colour dries quite strongly. I can always go back in with the white, not worried that way. It's just a bit of, is this enough? Does it need more? And again, need to reshape. So if you are buying gouache, I would buy a bigger white, because white seems a pretty key colour. And it's actually very useful for when you're working in watercolour, because you can get those final finishes. That you've lost maybe in a watercolour. It's fine for now, I can do more detail. Let's go on to this side. So use that purple to push that back. It's kind of a greyer colour there as it's changed. Grey there. This is a little. Then slightly stronger colour there. Still got plenty of details I can still see me doing, but I've got to be patient and build it up. Right, I can actually see this also folds over there. That comes up here. You really don't need a lot of colour on the surface for it to move quite a long way. Going down another size now because I think I'm getting into some final details. It's got a nice. Now this is a lovely brush. It's flat. So I can still get those flattened marks, but it's also so small that it's perfect for details. Dark, use that green, just darken this up a little bit. Not quite as white. That's also something I need to do, is make sure this actually touches the inside of the flower. Right, a few frayed edges, so let's just neaten those off. and add a little bit of that outline. Darken this. Really need to load my brush. There's a balance between having the brush too wet, too dry. So not only do you have to control your paint, you have to control the dampness of the brush. Because if it's too wet, it's going to kick out a lot more pigment than I need. I just want a touch. Because what I'm looking for is actually sharp edges. So this goes over here. Too strong. Take that down. Much cleaner edges than I maybe would do with a watercolour. Here there's a bit gappy. I like this bit because I just know that I have control over it. If it's gone a little bit too dark or a little bit too light, I can bring it back so easily. Whereas sometimes with a watercolour, you do have to then rely on an opaque paint, like I'm doing now, to be able to bring it back. Well, this is all opaque, so I can do it in one go. Colour goes up there. Still a little bit lighter here. Right, let's pick up, dump off my brush. Look at that, look how I like the white. Does sometimes sink in. You can see it drop back. It depends how wet you've got it. But those final finishes, you can get some lovely, really white highlights. I can bring that back. Now for this area. This is where I reshaped. Wet that a little bit. Down. There. Here needs to just darken as it's gone in a little bit. It's just little touches which makes this more painterly. Darker patch here. And see, I can add some little white. Too wet. That's very white there. Bring that back. Don't need too much here. I think that's worked okay. A little bit white on the top here. Yeah. Tidy this up. And the way to push that forward is to make this a little darker. Blend that back a little bit, and I like that blue, but just blend it back. Same here, I think I need that bit bluer. Nice. Right, I'm going to move on to this, and then possibly a little bit of colour in the flowers, but I might not need to, which is why I'm moving on. This has some touches of red up here, then comes down quite a light green and yellow. So pre-mixed greens, they can maybe look a little bit unnatural, but it's very easy just to add a little bit of red, a touch of blue, a touch of brown to alter the green. But I do sometimes make sure I've got a pre-mixed green on my palette, because it does take away some of the stress. You might find when mixing a green, you're not getting that right colour. Because they've painterly catch the edge there. And this is a bit that I wanted to do. That's why I created that shape. And that's this little star. Come on, pick up plenty of yellow. Damp the brush off because it's a bit wet. And you can see I still need to fix that up there. A little bit of white. Right. These are just just final details. Quite a dry brush. You can see how that actually has sunk back a little bit. Because of the strong colour underneath, I need really straight from the tube white. With these final touches I can be a little bolder. Just catching the surface of the paper. Blending out if it is a little strong. Oh, fix that. Right, few lines. Really dry my brush off. Again, dry my brush off. Don't like those. Fix it, white. I'm finding it easier to go around this way because I'm right-handed than I am the other way. That's right, there are not too many lines that are very visible, so I don't have to worry too much. This one, not a lot, just a suggestion. And one more thing, and this is really one more thing, I'm just going to reshape here. Zip them. I can keep working, keep manipulating, and that's again the beauty of gouache, but this is the fun bit where I can reveal. So the paint is still working as it's drying, and it will start to ping and brighten. Look at that. This is why you do have to stop, and you go, no, stop, because this reveal actually does help tie it all together, but also show you that the areas are done on the whole, and that you don't need to keep fiddling. Look at that. I do like doing that bit. So one finished bleeding heart flowers in Designer Gouache. So there you go, one bleeding heart flower for Valentine. I have a envelope and it is all ready to go. And I hope you enjoyed that, and join me again next week for another live demonstration.